Yo, what's good everybody? It's Sketch and welcome back to the channel. And on today's episode we're looking at DeathSmiles, developed by Cave and published by AMI Aksys Games. This horizontal shoot 'em up heavily rooted in the occult and gothic aesthetic, released to arcades in 2007 and later received a port to the Xbox 360 in 2008. This would come to be the first Cave developed shooter released to console in the North American and European market, and it's most certainly a unique shooter. Before we get much further, let's check out the story here real quick and see what's happening. A door to an alternate dimension suddenly opens and young Dia finds herself in a place resembling 20th century Europe when she's found by Lord Dior. Dior explains to her that the dimensional rift she came through has closed and returning home might not be an option, and takes her under his wing along with 3 others. The land of Gilverado is a place seemingly frozen in time where the supernatural is about as common as a trip to the local grocery store. Monsters and numerous creatures of the night have begun to attack the citizens on orders of the king of the land. Dior sends his angels into the fray to send those ghouls back to the Shadow Realm while dethroning the king, and just maybe finding a way back home to the real world. Gameplay wise, this is a pretty wild horizontal shoot 'em up that has a somewhat familiar feel to games like Troubleshooter or Section Z, where you can attack to the left or right side. If you hold both attack buttons down, you can initiate a burst mode, which will buff your attacks and also buff your orbiting familiar. You've also got screen clearing bombs, so you're gonna go into most stages with a formidable arsenal. DeathSmiles has 7 stages with its black label mode, adding an additional stage being an ice level that gets downright buck with the amount of gunfire on screen. Between the 4 playable characters, or 5 if you're playing the Mega Black Label mode, all have different projectiles and options, but they're mostly similar in damage, aside from Sakura, who just slaps whatever's in front of her. Gameplay here can get pretty intense with the amount of enemies you'll deal with at a time, and try to chain together for bigger multipliers, all while trying not to lose a stock in a veritable sea of gunfire. You can take a fair amount of damage, but you can also lose stocks very quickly. You can also choose your starting path and select your level of difficulty on each stage, ranging from 1 to 3 or the infamous 999 mode. The difficulty at a base isn't too bad, but will certainly keep you on your toes since the bullet hell levels of intensity kick off fairly early in the game. The base arcade and 360 modes are both challenging, along with the Mega Black Label mode if you really want to get spicy. Just be prepared for almost non-stop action from the second you fly into each stage. Graphics wise, this looks great with hyper bright colors and slick scrolling effects. Enemy sprites are also huge and highly detailed. Character models are also hand drawn for cutscenes, and sprites are almost just as detailed. The environments also lean into the occult and gothic style, with enemy types and an overall theme of Halloween and the macabre. The art style reminds me a lot of Treasure developed games, with its visual style being a blend of polygon and hand-drawn sprite work. One of the artists who worked on DeathSmiles 1 and 2, along with several other Cave shoot 'em ups, was Junya Inoue. He's also worked on the manga and anime series Batum, which is off the chain, so if you're looking for a good read, check those out. Both are highly recommended, especially the anime series. In short, this is a very stylish shooter that weaves a lot of design elements into an overall great composition. You see a bit of everything here with the enemy designs, and they're all drawn with a sick style that's got callbacks to various influences across the horror genre, like Cyclops, giant possessed trees, grim reapers, some dragons, and even a raging bull that's 100 times your size by comparison. Sprite work and backgrounds have an incredible amount of detail, and it's all wrapped up in a very flashy bundle that can easily sear your eyeballs with the vivid color and lighting effects seen throughout. Stages also have some excellent design here, with a level of detail and occasional parallax scrolling. Everything from the rip really pops with the animations and amount of things happening on screen at once, which can cause a touch of slowdown, but it takes a lot to get it to that point. You're able to clearly see the glowing spot on your character, which represents your hitbox, and it luckily sticks out compared to enemy projectiles and stage hazards. Your fire compared to the enemies is also easy to distinguish, and a larger visual perspective is available in the Xbox 360 play modes with their zoomed in playfield. Sound wise, this is a pretty sick soundtrack too, that at times sounds like it's the background music for a Guilty Gear game, and it's got some straight up belters in there. Altogether, it's a fun composition that goes with the on-screen chaos fairly well, and it's got a few catchy numbers in there, so a few of these might get stuck in your head after a while. Sound effects work here is also pretty dope, with some thick audio with the explosion and environmental effects. There's a fair bit of voice sampling here also, but the cutscenes don't have any voiceover, just text overlay. The soundtrack contains 23 original audio tracks, and the arranged versions have 16, with 2 tracks that were omitted from the original versions. Overall, DeathSmiles is one of the most interesting shoot 'em ups I've played in a while. It's got a fair challenge and has a lot of replay value, considering that each character has 2 endings depending on your choice at the end. And between the arcade and arranged 360 modes, there's a good bit of content available to run through. For those looking for some off-the-wall shoot 'em ups for the Xbox 360, this along with a few others is one to definitely check out. DeathSmiles gets an 8.5 out of 10 and is highly recommended to shoot 'em up fans, especially if you're into games with a toe plan feel that's ramped up to 11. There's a reissue of DeathSmiles 1 and 2 coming in December to Japan later this year, and maybe if we get lucky it'll also be available in the US. Otherwise, Otherwise, the original 360 version is still available on disc, but is not yet available in the online store. Hopefully this will be remedied either before or after the Japan launch later this year, but time will tell on that one. And if you made it this far into the video, I thank you for checking this out. If you find these videos helpful, that's awesome. I'm glad you can use it as a resource. Check back often. We'll have more reviews and commentaries coming from the near future, but until then, stay safe out there, take it easy. I'll see you on the next one.